The Boston Bruins won Big Rig's debut on Saturday against the Pittsburgh Penguins and remain in the driver's seat when it comes to securing first place in the Atlantic Division.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, April 15th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. As you can tell, I am a little hoarse this morning, actually, because over the weekend, our 11-year-old son was playing in the Ontario Cup, which is a basketball tournament featuring literally over 100 teams across Ontario for the under 12 age bracket. Our kid was on a team that came into their division with the 6th seed, and they ended up with the silver medal in their bracket. All that to say, you never know what's going to happen once the playoffs begin. Seeding doesn't necessarily matter, and that's important to remember as we look at the Bruins and the playoffs beginning likely Saturday or Sunday, maybe with not the most ideal playoff matchup, but we'll touch on that later in the podcast. First, I want to remind you, you can follow along on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Had been taking a bit of a break over there, but we'll get back into things now as the playoffs ramp up. Now, on Saturday, was in Niagara, hanging out with the team by the pool, managed to get back to the room to watch a bit of the Bruins versus Penguins, and it was a victory in Pat Maroon's debut for the Boston Bruins. Big Rig getting in there in favor of James Van Riemsdyk, who was the healthy scratch. He had one shot on goal, 13 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time. Hadn't played since February 6th due to back surgery that he underwent when he was a member of the Minnesota Wild. But a nice debut for the Big Rig, and just crazy to see the video afterwards of him and Brad Marchand hugging. Who would have thought that, 5 years ago, that he would be a part of this team and being embraced by now captain of the Boston Bruins, Brad Marchand. It was the two centers of note who led the way for the Bruins this season, who are leading the way in this one as well. Charlie Coyle with a pair of assists, Pavel Zacha with a goal and an assist to lead the way. All season long, the story has been the Bruins losing Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, not losing them per se, but those guys decided to retire. And whether or not Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha could fill the void, and that they have done with flying colors. Charlie Coyle is now up to 25 goals, 35 assists for 60 points. That is not a number that he has reached at any point in his career. His previous career high was 56 points back in 2016-17 with the Minnesota Wild. His next career high was 45 points, which was reached last season. 60 points for Charlie Coyle, playing an increased role, heavier minutes, just a huge feat and something that needs to be celebrated more. Pavel Zacha, to his credit as well, he's putting in a huge year. 58 points now, 20 goals, 38 assists. That for him is a new career high after he had posted 57 points last season, playing largely in a second line role alongside Krejci and Pastrnak. Again, bigger minutes, heavier minutes down the middle, and he's played in only 76 games this season. So if he hadn't missed some time, he would have already set new career highs. But here he is, 58 points, one shy of his career high of goals, which was set last season. Couple games left for him to reach that mark. Pastrnak got 2 assists as well in this one to raise his season point total to 109. Outside shot at reaching the 113 that he posted last year, provided he's not rested here over the next 2 games. Not going to hit 60 goals, but he's got a career high 62 assists, which is 10 more than he had last season, and still possible that he could reach 50 goals for the second time in his career. He needs 3 over the next 2 games to reach that. There were 6 different scorers in this one for the Bruins, showing off some impressive depth. Zacha, like I mentioned, scored, but also Morgan Geekie, Danton Heinen, Brad Marchand, and Jake DeBrusk. They all scored in this one as well. And then Kevin Shattenkirk getting one from the blue line. He's been in and out of the lineup. Seems as though they have set their roster for the playoffs. We'll touch on who was sent down to make way for the 7 that they seem to have in mind to carry into the playoffs. With Pat Maroon coming back, someone had to be sent down. We'll touch on who that was later on. In net in this one, it was Linus Ullmark. Not his best game. He allowed 4 goals on 32 shots for an .875 save percentage, but he still secured the win. He's got 3 wins in a row now, including against Florida and Nashville, and he and Swayman will likely split starts here over the next couple games as they get ready for the playoffs. But a good effort all around for the Bruins. The Penguins were a desperate team. They needed those 2 points to try to help secure a playoff spot. The Bruins in their own right, as Jim Montgomery noted, they're fighting for first, but they're more worried about getting their game ready for the playoffs. Whether they're first or second, he admitted it would be nice to be first, to take that Atlantic Division regular season first place, but it's not as paramount as getting their game ready. They did allow 4 goals, which they'd like to tighten things up, but the Bruins knew that the Penguins were fighting for their lives. It was a bit of a later start, so Jake DeBrusk said it was a different feel of the game, some momentum shifts, but the Bruins capitalized on their chances. It was a good test for them, and that's what they're going to be seeing. Kevin Shattenkirk said the atmosphere was great, some playoff atmosphere for them, juiced them up a little bit, and kind of a playoff road game for the Bruins in effect. And they came out with the win, and that is the most important thing. So the Bruins getting the 2 points. They are now 1 point up on the Florida Panthers for first in the Atlantic Division. And we'll tee up the week ahead later on in the show. Coming up, we'll talk about who was sent down to the AHL to make room for Maroon and why, as well as touch on some good news for Don Sweeney here as the podcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your ride. You're going to always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Now it's time for the Locked On NFL mock draft, which is going live on April 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel, which is available on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 p.m. to hear who local experts from Locked On are picking for every NHL franchise, with reactions from local college football experts, even a fantasy football angle. That's April 17th at 7 p.m. on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. So Pat Maroon was activated in order to play on Saturday against the Penguins. And to free up a roster spot, it was Mason Lohrei who got the short end of the stick and was sent back down to Providence. Now, that was mostly because he hadn't been playing much up with the big club, and they wanted to keep him in game action. Now, it's quite possible, well, it's likely he will be the next man up in the case of injury here heading into the playoffs. But for the time being, he was sent back down. The 23-year-old has appeared in 41 games for the Bruins this season, 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points. He, prior to the sending down, had played 17 games with Providence with 1 goal, 12 assists for 13 points. He has looked pretty good at times for the Bruins, but still pretty raw, and let's be honest, could use a bit of seasoning still down in the AHL. He played a couple games over the weekend. I mentioned he had 17 games prior to that. 1 goal, 2 assists for 13 points. He's now up to 1 goal, 14 assists for 15 total points in 19 games. So getting a bit productive while he's down on this stint. Chances are he'll be back at some point here as the Bruins begin their playoff push. The first guy to be called up for sure, and should be a opening night starter for the Bruins in 2024-25. Now, also over the weekend, it was announced that General Manager Don Sweeney will guide Team Canada as their GM for the Four Nations Face-Off. And he'll also be an assistant general manager for the 2026 Olympics. So great news for him. A great way to recognize the work that he has done with the Bruins over the last several years. Cam Neely, team president, said on behalf of the Bruins, we congratulate Don on the honor of serving as GM for Team Canada for the Four Nations Face-Off, as well as the assistant general manager for the Olympics. His tremendous work ethic, the success he's had building a competitive roster on a consistent basis, make him a great selection for Team Canada in both events. Don's very deserving of this recognition, and he will represent the Bruins well. Don Sweeney said he's honored. He appreciates the opportunity to be part of Team Canada. Doug Armstrong from the Blues is the GM for the Olympic team. And he said they're going to work hard to put together the best teams to represent Canada to compete at the highest level. Again, the Four Nations Cup is Sweden, Finland, Canada, USA. Those games will be played in Boston and Montreal in 2025. And then Canada, all the nations will represent themselves at the 2026 games. Where are those? In Italy, I believe. In Milan. Now, Sweeney, of course, in his 9th season as GM of the Bruins, 424 wins, a .677 winning percentage. That's the best in the NHL since his appointment to the role. This year, it'll be the 8th consecutive season the Bruins will be in the playoffs. Longest active streak in the league. The Bruins have won 2 President's Trophies. They set all kinds of records last season. Of course, they have not won a cup under Don Sweeney. They made it to the final in 2019. But as much as we criticize Sweeney for his drafting, perhaps some not so great contracts over the years, you can't argue the success that the Bruins have had under his tenure. And again, this season is a prime example of how solid he is as a general manager. You lose Bergeron, you lose Krejci. Could have been devastating for this team, but without a prospect really pipeline that has been sacrificed over the years due to trading away picks, he still, previously acquired Coyle and Zacha. He went out and boosted the group by adding Kevin Shattenkirk, James Van Riemsdyk, Jesper Boqvist, who's come on as of late. You have, a find in Matt Patra, who was excellent to begin the season. John Beecher, Trent Frederick, who were former first-round picks, have chipped in. So Sweeney, well-earned honor, and I know a lot of listeners will be cheering for the American team, but still be rooting for a Sweeney to succeed in this role. I will be, of course, as a Canadian. So there's some news and notes, and coming up, we'll take a look at what's up this week for the Bruins and the stakes at hand over the last 2 games of the regular season. As the NHL regular season wraps up, Sleeper remains our daily fantasy hockey app of choice because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Nikita Kucherov, Connor McDavid, David Pastrnak will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So goals, assists, saves, even when it comes to goalies. So win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Bruins fans, pay attention and nail your picks so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply, but that's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. It is incredibly hard to believe that this is the final week of the regular season, and this time next week, we will be talking playoffs. Where has the season gone? The Bruins have 2 games remaining on the schedule. They have a 1-point lead over the Florida Panthers in the Atlantic Division, but Florida only has 1 game remaining. So Boston has a game in hand. Therefore, they have the upper hand when it comes to securing top spot in the Atlantic. Now, maybe that's not a desirable position because top spot in the Atlantic will be taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Bruins have gone 4-0 against the Panthers, 4-0 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are 2-3 in the Atlantic. They have not fared as well against the Lightning, going, I believe, 1-1-2. But that's the way the playoff format is. Under the old, if you rank the teams 1 to 8, Boston's currently 2nd. The Lightning are 6th. The Hurricanes are, the Bruins are 3rd. The Hurricanes are 6th. Let me say that again. The Bruins are 3rd. The Tampa Bay Lightning are 6th. The Carolina Hurricanes are 2nd. The New York Islanders are 7th. So if you're ranking them 1 to 8, those are the matchups we get with the current format. Those are the matchups we're going to get likely. The Bruins have 2 games remaining. They're playing tonight in Washington, and then they will come home to play the Ottawa Senators to wrap up the regular season schedule. Now, the Capitals have a lot to play for in this one. They are currently holding on to the second wildcard spot. However, they are level in points with the Detroit Red Wings, who also have 2 games remaining. They're tied with the Philadelphia Flyers, who only have 1 game remaining. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are 2 points back. No, 1 point back of all 3 of those teams, also with 2 games remaining. So huge stakes for the Capitals tonight. If they want to secure a playoff spot, they quite simply have to beat the Boston Bruins. And still winnable game for the Bruins because the Capitals really have problems scoring. In fact, if you look at the Eastern Conference, they have the fewest goals among all Eastern Conference teams, 12 fewer than the next closest Montreal Canadiens. And that's why they have a minus 40 goal differential. They're a solid defensive team, and Charlie Lindgren has been pretty good for them this season, but they have a minus 4 goal differential, which is 3rd worst in the conference. If they were to make the playoffs, it'd be a bit of a miracle, and they could really solidify their spot by winning tonight. We'll preview the Senators game more closely tomorrow night, but that's what's on tap for the Bruins. If they win, they secure first in the Atlantic, and they will get likely the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 1. Now, the Panthers have 1 game left on their schedule. They will host the Toronto Maple Leafs on Tuesday. Austin Matthews will be chasing 70 goals in that one. So the Bruins are well positioned here to win the Atlantic. Boston 6-4 over their past 10. They have won 5 of their past 6. Capitals 3-5-2 over their past 10, but 2 of their past 3, including wins over Tampa and Detroit. Charlie Lindgren, like I said, he's got a .909 save percentage. And the Capitals, they have very good team defense. They're allowing, 3.14 goals per game, which is 18th. They're scoring only 2.65. They're not a strong face-off team like the Bruins. They're not particularly good at special teams. Again, this is a winnable game for the Bruins. It's kind of an anomaly that the Capitals are even alive. They're led in scoring by Dylan Strome, who's got 66 points. Alex Ovechkin's got 30 goals, 64 points. So winnable game for the Bruins, although the Capitals have surprised all season long by, somehow being in this playoff race. I mentioned all those wildcard teams. The Islanders are still not secure either. They've got 90 points, so they're in a strong position. 2 games remaining, though, so they could still be passed by the Capitals. They could still be passed. They could be matched in points by the Penguins if they win out and the Islanders lose out. So still a lot to be decided in the Metropolitan Division. And with respect to the second wildcard spot, Washington, Detroit, Philly, Pittsburgh, all still alive there. The Bruins looking to secure first in the Atlantic. They could do so with a win tonight. So will they rest some guys tomorrow night? Will they give the regular season finale on home ice a full effort? We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what happens tonight first. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for bearing with me through my lost voice from cheering my kid on and his team over the weekend. Thank you for bearing with me as I took Friday off to attend my uncle's funeral. Miss you, Uncle Bruno. And join me tomorrow as we recap what happens tonight, tee up the season finale, and bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.